Paul's argument in Romans 3 parallels his discussion about faith and the law in Galatians. Sensing that his comments might lead some to conclude that he is exalting faith at the expense of the law, Paul asks the rhetorical question, do we then overthrow the law by this faith? The word translated overthrow in Romans 3:31 is kartagio. Paul uses the word frequently, and it can be translated as to nullify, to abolish, to be brought to nothing, or even to destroy. Clearly, if Paul wanted to endorse the idea that the law was somehow done away with at the cross, as some people today claim he taught, this would have been the time. But Paul not only denies that sentiment with an emphatic no, he actually states that his gospel establishes the law. Why is this even a concern? Why is this question, was the law done away with, even a concern? Why? There's an underlying premise. I just talked about premises and lenses that you wear. There's an underlying premise that his audience had that many Christians are still struggling with. What's the underlying premise?
God's law is imposed on humanity.
Thank you. That God's law is imposed. And thus Paul's having to educate them on this. This is the same trouble that we have today. Think about this. When a doctor provides remedy to a patient with disease, let's say a patient has been doing misconduct. They've been using IV drugs, sharing dirty needles, and using IV drugs with dirty needles, they've got infection, endocarditis, infection inside their heart, and the doctor comes and gives them antibiotic to treat the infection, heals the person, and they're well. Has healing the person just done away with the laws of health? Now that you've had the antibiotic, laws of health no longer apply to you. They're gone. We wiped the laws of health out. Do you see how silly that is? That's design law thinking. It's ridiculous. You don't have to make the argument when you understand design law and what the problem is. The reason he has to make the argument is because they think the problem is a legal problem, and if grace comes and pardon comes, it's like in this courtroom, well, he pardons everybody who speeds. Well, I guess the law of speeding has been done away with because we pardon everybody. In that case, it might be because that law is arbitrary. It's just made up. But the laws of health, God's design laws for reality, are not arbitrary, and thus they're not done away with. They're established. Just like treating the person with the endocarditis establishes the laws of health by giving them the remedy that restores them to harmony with the laws of health. This is the only way to reasonably understand this, in my view. Does anybody think of a way that's better to understand this?
Sometimes when they're malignant, you can't even cure it if they're gone. They're so far gone.
And that would be true for our human limitations in treatment, but God has a remedy that actually treats perfectly for those who let him. So in our particular condition, then the malignancy would be a malignancy of the faculties that are sensitive to truth and love. If you destroy within yourself those faculties that are capable of recognizing truth, are capable of responding to love, then your condition is terminal without remedy, because there's no truth that you'll react to. There's no love having the impact on you. You've destroyed the avenues through which the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth and love, works. Okay? So that would be a good analogy to that. That's right. Third paragraph, which is not from an inspired source, I want to point out, but are Bible scholars making commentary. And this is what they say. The plan of justification by faith reveals God's regard for his law in demanding and providing the atoning sacrifice. If justification by faith abolishes law, then there is no need for the atoning death of Christ to release the sinner from his sins and thus restore him to peace with God. Was that clear to everybody? Because I want you to start thinking, how can you rephrase that? How can take elements of that and understand them in a healthy way? I'll read it again from their language. This is what the commentary says. The plan of justification by faith reveals God's regard for his law in demanding and providing an atoning sacrifice. If justification by faith abolishes the law, then there was no need for the atoning death of Christ to release the sinner from his sins and thus restore him to peace with God. Sounds very legal to me. But
God is bound by his law to do something.
Yes, but let's translate some of these legal words into the reality to which they actually mean in real life. So justification really means what? Setting right or putting right. And what's wrong that needs to be put right? The hearts, minds of sinners. Okay. So, and then what is faith? We just talked about what faith is. What's faith? Trust, our understanding trust with God. Yes, that's right. What is law? In the right way, understood. Design parameters, design protocols, that's law. And then what is atoning? What's the healthy, mature way of understanding atoning? What's that?
Healings. Healing of relationship.
Yes, okay, healing relationship. I like that. Okay, now that's right. At one-ment, that's what it means. Bringing parties who are apart back into oneness, at one. You remember the old King James Bible translated at one, atone? In 1611, there was a verb, O-N-E. We have a noun, O-N-E. It's the number one. But there was a verb in 1611 spelled the same way, O-N-E. And so if two people were at odds, they're arguing, and your friend, you say, hey, I'm going to go one them. It was an action word. I'm going to bring them into one. It very quickly became, I'm not going to go one them, I'm going to go at one them. Spelled A-T-O-N-E. But it's pronounced with the Old English, just like when you're all by yourself, you're not all one, you're alone. We go and atone. Okay? We bring into unity. So atonement is exactly what you say, relationship, unity. So with all that in mind, we could rewrite the commentary to read like this. The plan of restoring people to God's perfection by trust reveals God's regard for his design for life. And as this could be accomplished only by providing the reuniting and healing sacrifice. If restoring people to God's perfection by trust abolishes God's design for life, then there was no need for the reuniting and healing death of Christ to heal the sinner from his terminal condition and thus restore him to peace with God. Doesn't that make more sense? And that's what they were saying, but they use this language. And I'm going to tell you, they use the language because they don't want to come out and actually say what it means to them. What it means to them is, you're under a judicial death condemnation of death sentence. You're under a judicial death sentence. God has got you in death row in the universal prison. And if you don't get the legal payment applied to your account in heaven, then God will execute and kill you. That's what they don't want to come out and say, because it's horrible. And so they hide it in this kind of language. Tuesday's lesson, entitled The Purpose of the Law.